misconception, really discussing the African spiritual implications behind this. So the identity and surnames lecture did take place over 2 lectures because there was quite a bit to get into, because I had to go through how we correct mistakes from 4 generations back. We then had a discussion of imimoya and understanding how imimoya works and how they clash and how they can result in the formation or the birth of amawele. And then the last one that we had last week was ukuzalwa kwembethe. Very, very prevalent topic. A lot of people don't understand what it means, ukuzalwa kwembethe. And then that's when I introduced you to the 4th law of African spirituality. And I really looked at the 5 types of ukuzalwa kwembethe and how to actually correct them and debunked some bad healing practices and myths. So today's lecture, we're going to introduce a new law, the 5th law of African spirituality. We're going to look at, so today's lecture, I'm going to tell you, okay, fine, in your family history, what level or what depth are we going into now, and how this lecture relates to your family history. Because remember, the purpose of these lectures is for you to watch it, and then for you to go back with your book, sit down with your grandparents, uncles, aunts, and have conversations. So now I'm going to teach you so this lecture is going to be a different conversation for you to have with your family. So every week you should have a different conversation with your family. That's the goal. The most important premise when it comes to this, then my favorite, the superiority trap. Very, very, very interesting. And then we're going to debunk this myth that religion is up against culture. And then what I've come up with, the multi-layered triangle of spiritual connectivity, and how we go from God to ancestors to ourselves. Okay, let's tuck into this. So how I'll respond to questions is I will stop once I've completed a concept, I will stop and answer the questions that are actually on the comment section. So we've had 4 laws of African spirituality that have been addressed. So my laws of African spirituality are all found in nature and are also kind of based on science, especially when you speak about things like spiritual diversity, because even in nature, you need genetic diversity, and you also need biodiversity. So the same with spirituality, you need that diversity involved. Balance and equilibrium is also found in nature, and that everything maxes out its potential. That's seen in nature as well. When you take a tree and plant it in a pot plant, it's only going to grow so high. But if you plant that very same tree in the back garden, it can grow even higher. So today, the 5th law is the foundation of culture is spirituality. It is through the execution of cultural practice, that one can reach full spiritual expression and manifestation of their ancestral gift. So I'm going to explain what that means. It means, simply put, that one is born with an ancestral gift. And it is through spiritual liberation. Once you liberate itongo or your spirit, then do you have access or reach to your ancestral gift. And once you have accessed it and reached it, right, can it begin to manifest in your work, your life, and your relationships, simply put. But I'm going to expand on it as we go along. So the kind of questions or the kind of conversation you should be having after this lecture today is we're focusing on the history of religious practice in your family. How did your family explore God, right? How did your family go about finding or celebrating or worshiping or interacting or engaging with a higher being? So this is not African culture. African culture is not is not necessarily a religious practice. I hope that makes sense. African religion is. Okay, and I'm going to explain African religion towards the end of the lecture. But just finding out, like when I say how did your family interact with God, how did they work to engage God, or what kind of the history of religious practice in the family, I'm speaking about, was your grandfather Wakashembe? Was your grandfather ZCO? Was your grandmother ZCC? Was she Catholic? Was she Anglican? Was she Protestant? And okay, fine, we had a fourth generation that were all Protestants, but then they changed to Anglican. Who changed and why did they change? And what were the implications of that change? What did it mean for what kind of implications did the religious practice or the change in religious practice have on our cultural experience? I hope that makes sense, because depending on your religion or how you practice religion, it will impact your experience or practice of African culture, because religion, right, will determine your understanding or perception of culture. I'm going to elaborate on that now later on. So that's the kind of conversation we're looking to have with our family or our grandparents after this lecture. Okay, so here is the premise of the ancestral gift. And let me explain, and I'm going to take some time to explain it. Those of you know that have been following us, I always refer to the three parts of man: body, mind, and spirit. Okay. When one grows up, each of these three parts, in order for them to reach full expression, okay, and balance, they need equal amounts of nourishment. Okay. So as much as we eat the foods or the things the exercise that we do, and the conditions that we put our body under, or that we have our body experience, all nurture or detriment our physical growth or physical development. That's body. It is through education, both informal and formal. Informal education is just as important as formal education, okay? That the mind is nurtured, right? And when one nurtures the mind, we then go on to have a job. We acquire, because we need to earn money, so we can put food on the table and so we can survive. Now, by nurturing itongo, okay, by nurturing the spirit, right, and aiding the spirit to reach full expression, okay, and being able to fully communicate with itongo and your spirit, and being able to comprehend the messages, because communication without comprehension is just you screaming, is just a soliloquy or a monologue. You want a back and forth and a bit of an exchange. You want yourself to understand what itongo desires, and itongo to understand what is most troubling to you at that moment in time. So communication and expression allows for access to your ancestral gift, okay? Because in your genetic inheritance, there is spiritual inheritance. Spiritual inheritance that comes, that you acquire from your mother and father, grandfather, and grandmother, and so on and so forth. And it is once you are able to take your job that you have, whether it be doctor, lawyer, advocate, so on and so forth, and once you access the spiritual wisdom and knowledge that is in, right, your ancestral gift, you can incorporate it into your job, and then your job is no longer a job, which is a means of putting food on the table, but your job becomes a craft. And crafts serve purpose. So once you have a craft that is serving a purpose, it is in that purpose that you begin to understand why you have been placed on planet Earth. And that once you have a job that becomes a craft, and that craft serves a purpose, that purpose will then begin to give you meaning in life. So we have too many people that are very successful but are unhappy, or they're not content with what they're doing. It is because they don't have a craft that is serving, that serves a purpose. And this purpose comes from God. And I'm going to explain to you how that connection takes place, how God is responsible, how the gift, so God determines the purpose, but the gift is determined by Abadala. And then Abadala designate itongo and umuntu with that particular gift, because the purpose is not for the individual, but it's for the family and the greater community at large. Okay, but we're going to tuck into that now. Hence, spiritual nourishment is incredibly important. And that is what African culture is. That is what the execution of African culture is. It is nothing more than spiritual nourishment. It is not it's not to be done out of obligation because ugogo nomkhulu say I must doing it. You must do, you should feel the need, you should want to do African culture and execute it because you want to nourish your ancestral spirit. Let's keep going. So what is the spiritual superiority trap? If you guys follow us for quite some time now, I'm not sure if there's anybody that's new to our page and to our work. Umsamo doesn't focus on ethnicity and culture. What we do is we look at the spiritual implications or the spiritual practices, spiritual principles underlying African culture. And then we use cultural practices within the Zulu culture as examples to demonstrate the actual principle. And then we say to people, Venda, Pedi, Tsonga, Xhosa, go home and have a discussion with your parents about the principle and then say, Goko, Tinama Venda or us Venda people, how did we ensure that this principle was acted upon? And then your grand will say, okay, fine. Tina, in Venda culture, we don't use a goat, we use a donkey, or whatever the case may be. So I want us to get it out of our head that it's about culture and that everything we do is about Zulu culture. It's not about Zulu culture. We use the Zulu culture as an example or an illustration for the principle. So the spiritual superiority trap, okay, is I think it's growing because a lot of people feel that in some way, shape, or form, I don't know when it happened, but in us beginning to learn to love ourselves, we began to undermine other religious practices and other cultural beliefs. I don't know when that took place. Loving yourself as a Black person or loving yourself as an African means that you appreciate the fact that I come from the cradle of humankind and everything comes from me. But even though everything comes from me, it doesn't necessarily mean that I am above or better than anyone else or anything else that has come after me. Okay? Because the biggest mistake we're doing at the moment is we have the belief that African religion or African culture has everything that Itongo would need, right? So let me just read here. The spiritual superiority trap is when one falls so in love with discovering their African culture that they believe all Itongo requires for nourishment is that and that alone. It is the belief that you cannot receive and benefit spiritual wisdom from any other religion or cultural practice. So what does that mean? That means, as me, Siyabonga Mkhize, I chuck away the Bible. I don't go to church. I don't believe that I don't believe I don't believe that I believe that the Muslims do not understand God and their way is beneath my way, and all I need to do is uklap. That's it. That's all I need to do. And I'm never going to engage in anything else. I'm never going to read anything else. I'm never going to entertain anything else. I'm never going to look at anything else, right? It is when you actually undermine other religions or cultural practices, whether it's making fun of them, whether it's making jokes about them, whether it's mocking them, that is a form of undermining. And on top of this, you then begin to impose your beliefs on others. It's not enough for you to simply be content with your understanding and your journey. You should be so wrapped up in your own journey that you don't have the time to impose your beliefs on others. And then you are no longer seeking full spiritual expression, but rather you're seeking spiritual validation. So in other words, when I open myself up to learning or gaining spiritual nourishment from other religions, I am seeking spiritual expression. But as soon as I narrow in on myself and undermine other religions, I'm no longer looking for expression, but rather looking for validation. I want others to validate me that I am better, that I am indeed better than them, that I am indeed above them, that we are superior, that they are beneath me. There's a big difference between the two. And a lot of people are falling into this trap, and they're not reaching full spiritual expression, but they're delving, they are so deep in validation that they can't even realize it. Okay. And then finally, you become the thing you hated most. So in Africa, when we were oppressed and we were told that this way is the only way and there's no other way, you are becoming your worst enemy. You are becoming the thing that oppressed you, the thing that said to you, you can't be African and explore other cultural practices. You can't be African but be open. You can't be African and explore the very thing that said to you, you are not the human of cradle. You are not the cradle of mankind. So that is the one thing I want us to. You must understand that, and that is why if you read our books, if you read the books written by Dr. Mkhize, he refers to Buddhism. He makes reference to Islam. He makes reference to Judaism. He makes reference to being a pagan. He makes reference to the Bible. We make reference to a whole host of religious or cultural practices because we understand that spiritual nourishment cannot come from one place. When sitting there at home, you don't only shop from Pick and Pay. You don't only eat the food from Pick and Pay. You eat food from Checkers. You eat food from Woolworths. You eat food from overseas. Even you eat seafood. You eat vegetables. You have a variety in your diet, right? Even intellectually, you're not constantly doing one. You don't have the same form of intellectual stimulation or all the time. You're not constantly reading a book or working on your laptop, but you're doing different things. Hence, we have hobbies, because hobbies are a form of psychological or intellectual nourishment, even though it's a break, right? So why would we expect the same from Itong? Diversity is a requirement in nature as well as spirituality. And when it comes to nourishment, right, spiritual nourishment and spiritual food, the sources must also be diverse, and you must be open to the notion, because when nombono and they're telling you to go to Asia, and then you're gonna say, but why am I going to Asia? Why am I going to a Buddhist temple in Asia? You know, Gandhi, you don't know what Itongo requires that spiritual nourishment, because it's helping Itongo go one step closer to full expression, and from full expression, you then get to your gift, job, craft, purpose, meaning. Without diverse, spiritual nourishment, how on earth are you going to get there? I want to take some questions now. I'm going to go back to the very top when I first answered. Okay. Let's take some questions. So you are warning us against things such as black supremacy because they are turning us into oppressors. I'm not referring to black supremacy, Nokukanya. What I am referring to is the belief that my way, uklaba, abadala, isintu, is it. That there is nothing else that Itongo will ever benefit. And the day I realized this was the day Ubaba one day came home with a Buddhist monk's face. And I was like, how, Baba? Why would you want this? Like, Siyabonga. And he came to me and said, Siyabonga, I don't know why I have this Buddhist monk face. All I know is Abatala said, go and get this Buddhist monk face. And then only later on did they begin to reveal why they wanted that Buddhist monk's face. So what I'm referring to is that do not get so never feel that you are superior in any way, shape, or form spiritually, or never feel that isintu, isiko, abadala, uhlaba is so superior that you cannot access wisdom or knowledge from different sources, because abadala work differently to you. If itongo lako sees something in Islam that they want you to learn and understand, they may send you there, not necessarily to assimilate the religion and become a Muslim, no, but just to dabble in that and engage in it, because there is something that is going to benefit from it spiritually. Okay, I'm just trying to find the questions. So at the moment they're just comments. Okay. So they're just comments at the moment, no questions, so I'm going to press on, guys. Okay. All right. Right. So, religion versus culture. And I hate actually religion versus culture. I actually shouldn't have put that down there. I don't like, because then it implies that there's some sort of competition taking place. There's no competition between religion and culture. There is no competition. It's just different functions. The reason why the functions are different is because the levels are different, and I'm going to show you why now. Culture is what you are, whereas culture is, there was a bit of a typo there. Culture is who you are. Religion is what you are. So in other words, culture is tied to my genetic and ancestral inheritance. I can't change Uti Gizalo Matuma no Mkhize. I can't change who my parents are. I can't change that I'm the father of a healer. That is in my blood, right? I physically cannot change that. I cannot, and I can't change who my grandparents were. So my cultural practice is something that I've inherited that I cannot change. All right. And there is very little room for variation, and it's quite fixed. This works on an ancestral level or an ancestral plane. Whereas religion is not who you are, but what you are, right? So in other words, I am Siyabonga Mkhize. That is who I am. What I am is a Christian Catholic. That makes sense. So someone can elect to be a Muslim, or they can elect, and then obviously, and that's why people can change religions. You can change your religion. You can have multiple religions in your lifetime. But in terms of culture, because culture is tied to your genetic inheritance, you can't necessarily change that. Okay? Not quite fixed. And this is an important plane. The religious plane is an important plane. And the reason that there are levels is because each level gives us a different room, different levels of exploration, and different levels or room, accommodation rather, for us to explore and dabble in different things. This works on the God or higher being level. Okay, so this is not going to necessarily, this is going to make sense later on when I explain to you in my diagram, but simply put, religion and culture are a necessity. You need both, because without both, you're going to be 2 out of 3. And I'm going to show you why you need both religion and culture, because they're on different levels, serving different functions and different purposes. Okay. Right. So I'm going to introduce you guys to the notion, this is how I made sense of it, the multi-layered triangle of spiritual connectivity. Okay. So the first level the first triangle is the human triangle. That is the 3 parts of man. We understand that: body, mind, spirit. And says the African spiritual laws 1 and 2 are the most important to this particular level, right? And it is through itongo that we're able to connect to amanyamatongo. But this, in order for you to have a complete human triangle. You need full expression of each part. And in order for that to happen, each part needs to be equal, receive equal amounts of nourishment that each part requires. Okay? So in other words, it's not enough, Uguti, yeah, no, physically you look after yourself, spirit, you do everything that needs to be done for itongo, but intellectually you're not engaging with your work. You're not reading, you're not furthering yourself, you're not learning more about your job, you're not studying further, you're not engaging with different kind of texts. So if you don't grow yourself intellectually, then how is itongo meant to take your job from job to craft and beyond? Right. So ancestral law 1 and 2 are the most important to this particular level. Okay. The next level is the ancestral level, right? So the top has 3 parts. This ancestral layer has 2 parts to it, right? There are 3 names. Yeah, you can either say ancestors, amadlozi, amatongo, abadala, up to you, right? There are 3 parts to level 1, 2 parts to level 2, and 1 part to level 1. So on the ancestors part, because you are made up of both mom and dad, and because abadala bakho are made up of mom and dad, there are 2 parts to level 2, right? And on this level, okay, this is where African culture operates. And your strongest connection to this level is your own ancestral spirit, itongo lako. So you will not be able to connect to amanya matongo if when you are not able to nourish itongo, like your own ancestral spirit. Because if it does not feel like it is being nourished, you cannot connect to abadala, and because you cannot connect to abadala, there is then an implication on the connection you have with God. Let me explain. Let me elaborate. I'll elaborate on that now. The next level, is that where God is involved, or a higher being, or Allah. So different religions refer to God as different things. And I'm not going to say that there's only one God, because different religions will experience God differently. Like in Hinduism, if I stand to be corrected, in Hinduism, they have multiple gods, right? So I'm going to use the term God as just to describe one unit. But in actual fact, different religion experiences and explore God differently. But God is this level. So now this diagram here is not 2D, but rather it is 3D. Okay? It is 3-dimensional, not 2-dimensional. So here it looks like it's 2-dimensional when it's actually 3-dimensional, with the human level being at the top and then the God or higher being level being at the bottom. My apologies for the arrows being in the incorrect places. I think once I moved it across from PowerPoint, they shifted around. Apologies for that. But basically what I'm trying to demonstrate here is God, or the higher being, because it came first before anything else in the world. God was first, or higher being was involved before human beings, before dinosaurs, before single cellular organisms. There was God. Hence, God is the higher being, is the foundation. The foundation, or God, decides the purpose that needs. Okay, so God decides, has the blueprint. So God, or the higher being, has the blueprint for life, right? God, or the higher being, knows the purpose, that he knows where the African population, or people of Africa, or the human race needs, where we need to go. Okay. He also understands that there are certain individuals that are the ones that are going to get us to where we need to go. So God is the foundation, right? And then God will communicate the purpose that or the mission is going to be communicated to the ancestors, right? On the ancestral level. And then Abadala will send one itongo to enter into said individual human being, right? And then with Lelo Tongo is the mission that comes from God. So God is going to communicate the mission to Labadala Baga Mkhize, Noma Baga Dlamini, or so on and so forth, and say, this is the mission. Then these ancestors will sit together and say, okay, fine, if this is the mission, different roles. So when you do an investigation, you have an aim, and then in order to meet your aim, there are different objectives that need to be fulfilled. So in order for you to meet your objectives and tick every single box, different purposes and different roles need to be fulfilled as well. It is at that moment that Abadala decide, okay, this individual is going to be responsible for this objective. Hence, we are going to give him that ancestral gift and that purpose for that meaning. And that is why it is not enough for one individual to move the human race forward, but we need a collection of individuals, because different individuals have different objectives towards the greater aim. I hope that makes sense. So God is going to say, this is what so God decides the aim. Yeah, so God is going to say, this is the aim, right? Abadala are going to digest that and break it down into objectives. Once they have broken it down into objectives, they're going to understand, okay, fine, we're going to send Lelo Tongo to that individual with that gift, Lelo Tongo to that individual with that gift, Lelo Tongo to that individual with that gift. Each gift is going to serve a particular objective. And by making sure that each and every single member of the family is ticking off their objective, right? In other words, the job is becoming a craft, which is serving purpose and giving the individual meaning, then the family has done their job that God requires of them, right? Because God considers the entire human race. Tinabadala, we consider our family, right? And other families in our communities. And then by our family completing their mission, and another family, then what you find is an entire race begins to move forward. That is why, okay, on the ancestral level, right, that is why if you look here, we don't have, yes, you can go to church and worship God. That is why when Abadala say to you, go and see a Buddhist monk and consult with him for 2 or 3 hours, they understand, because of that connection. Their connection with God is different to the connection we have with God. Yes, we have a connection with God. That connection is definitely there. But Le Abadala is different. Because from Abadala, they are able to say, okay, fine, what kind of spiritual nourishment do you require? Okay. So now when one does not, so I'm going to show you guys why it is important to have both religion and culture involved. Because on this plane here, between ancestor and God is African religion. Between yourself and ancestors is culture. So you need to make sure that both of these elements are a form of spiritual nourishment. So you need to make sure that you are nourishing Itongo with both culture and African religion or religion. Let me explain. So when one says to you, uthi no ngisindisiwe, ngiyasonta kuphela, angingeni izinto zabadala, angihlabi, angenzi lutho, nothing. The connection that they are severing, or that they are choosing to omit, is the one between human and ancestors. So now your triangle is going to be broken here. You need a complete triangle in which all three levels are, you should be able to bounce between each level. Because remember, guys, as things are happening in the world, things are changing, people are doing certain things. God is sitting with the blueprint, what needs to happen on planet Earth for human beings. He's constantly sending Abadala different messages. They're getting different messages back. And then they need to also say, okay, fine, change of plan. Here's the new objective. Come back. The objective has changed a little bit. Come back. This is a new gift. Okay, we're adding on to this new gift. Okay, shucks, you need something new. Okay, you're gonna get married to that individual, to that family, and from that family, you're gonna get and you're gonna get someone else's name. And Lelo Tong is going to bless you with a different ancestral gift on top of the one that you have now, which is going to help us meet our new objective. So you see, those kind of exchanges are constantly taking place. This movement. Hence, you need all three levels to be in sync and connected to one another. Okay? So when said individual falls into the trap of the superiority trap, and all he knows is isinto, isiko. That's it. That's all I know. I'm executing isinto nesiko. I'm not going to entertain any. I'm not going to read up on any other. I'm not going to engage. I'm going to undermine other religious practices. What they are doing is they only have this connection here, right? So now, what they are essentially doing is they are limiting they are limiting their own potential, because manje, what you have God is saying, listen, there is a change of plan. Here is a new aim, or here is an amended aim, or a changed aim. Okay. Now your ancestors are the ones that are sitting down together and like, okay, fine, the aim has changed, the objectives need to be changed, therefore the roles and responsibilities need to change, right? But now, how are your ancestors going to get that message? How are they going to receive that message? How are they going to communicate it to you if when you have forgotten about the African religious aspect of it? So you are not nourishing Itong with African religion, and now your triangle, your African triangle, your multi-layered triangle of spiritual connectivity is broken. I just want to take some questions before I talk into African spirituality. Oh, sorry guys, I was meant to move that. Okay, I'm just typing into questions now. I just wanted to put this comment on. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say about keep things open. Tarot cards and crystals aren't necessarily black or African, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that Abadala don't want you to dabble in that. That doesn't necessarily mean that Abadala can't use that or they can't adapt to that. The beautiful thing about African religion is its ability to adapt. And I'm going to explain that to you now. I just want to answer some questions. Okay, I just want to just handle this. Okay, the issue is not per se who is right now, but there is life after death. And where do we go from there? Depending on what you believe in now determines your afterlife. Okay. You are correct. So I think I think most human beings believe, we all have the belief, share the premise that, or the belief that, I don't know, let me not speak for human beings. Let me just say, I share the belief that there is life after death. You see, belief is tricky because I can believe that I can do whatever. I can move to the US of A and Isn't will never follow me. But that's why I was speaking about culture and religion. You can't change. Sometimes it's not a matter of belief. It's about what's in your blood. What have you inherited? So we need to be careful about belief and facts because it's in your blood. If something is in your blood, which you are the son of Inyanga or you are the daughter of Isanus, you can't change that. So whether or not you believe that has implications on you is not going to stop it from actually happening or taking place. Here we go. I had a question you didn't answer. Do non-African religions respect or accept African religions or beliefs? as religions. So I'm not. I'm not. So I will admit that I'm not particularly well read up on exactly if other religions do respect or how other religions perceive African culture or African religion as a whole. What I'm focusing on at the moment is what I'm focusing on is we need to look at ourselves and we need to think about, what are we doing wrong as Africans? And I'm going to explain African religion now, and I hope it makes sense. And you're going to see why why your question, I don't want to say how do I put it? Why your question doesn't really matter. If you understand African religion and you're focused on African religion, it's not going to really matter what other religions perceive of you. What other religions feel or think about you. Remember what I said about the spiritual superiority trap. It doesn't hurt. If Itongolam benefits something from Buddhism or Islam, it benefits me. And by benefiting me, it benefits my family, and my family, it benefits Africans in Africa. If, I'm not saying that's the case, if Islam doesn't respect African religion and respect African culture, then that's on them, not on me. That's on them, not me. My focus is taking Africa first. Okay. Okay, Mogete has quite a few questions. Okay, delayed question. I'm watching and pausing on YouTube. What religion did we practice before colonization? What did we have? So, guys, please can you read up on Kemet, African religion? That is KEM, Kemet African religion, yeah. And those of you on, there's a gentleman, who is it? Hold on, yeah, it's KEM, Kemetic religion, Kemetic African religion, and that was the one. If I'm not correct, if I'm starting to be correct, that is what we practiced before colonization. That is what we practiced before colonization. Kemetic religion, and what you'll find is what you'll find from Kemetic religion is that you'll find a lot of the elements from Kemetic religion are found in other religions around the world. Though I must say, I'm still learning a lot more about Kemetic religion, and there probably will be a lecture on Kemetic religion which will be given. I am preparing that, but this concept here, what did we do before, that is going to be a whole lecture on its own. So it's going to be Kemet religion. Please correct me if I'm saying it incorrectly. I really don't mind being corrected by anyone here if I'm saying anything incorrectly. Okay, let's say mom's Anglican and dad's family is Catholic. Okay, can mama request you to become Anglican? Okay, so Michael, it depends on what surname you have as a family. So, excuse me, Siyabonga Mkhize, it's Catholic, right? Were my sisters to marry into my sister to marry into a Anglican family, then she would practice Anglican religion, and she would practice, she would go to an Anglican church, and she would do things the Anglican way, right? If you have your mother's maiden surname, or you have assume you have your mother's maiden surname and your mother is Anglican, she can request you can become Anglican and stay Anglican. I hope that answers your question. If not, just let me know. Okay. I need help. I have a gift of praying, but was passed to me by my great-grandmother. I do pasha with water and candles, and I do feel the connection to Abadala and pray. So, okay, so remember, I'm not sure if you've watched the previous lectures. So I said in the previous lectures, umthandazo is a form of ukupahla. And kunabantu, after the initiation, are meant to become healers using the word of God, i.e. Bible. They're going to become priests or pastors. That is their form of healing. It does happen. It does happen that way. So essentially you are gifted with healing, but isithunywa can say to you, can direct you after healing to say, this is what you are going to do. You are going to be a priest or a pastor, or a leader of a church group, or so on and so forth. Because remember, isithunywa is the one that is responsible for determining the final form, the final type of healer you are going to be. Right? This thing of wooting isithunywa is incorrect to say. I've always said that. It's incorrect to say. Okay. Why does the mission go to those who have left the natural world first before it gets to those who are in it? Okay, right. The reason the mission goes to abadala qala is because when as the living, you don't know, we can't, okay, by virtue of the fact that majority of our interaction with the world is limited to our five senses, we are unable to say this is the mission. You see, because, okay, let me explain it properly. The reason it goes to Abadala first is because Abadala are metaphysical beings. They are non-living, which means they can see past yourself. You can't see past yourself. As much as we can say I'm not selfish, I can say I'm considerate. You actually cannot see past yourself. Even those that are gifted, even those that are healers, no human being can see past themselves, right? They can see what's going to happen globally, but in the sense that our Dala are able to sit down, right, and say, this is the mission. How are we going to reach this mission over the next 100 years? And they can sit down and come up with a timeline and say, okay, fine, 2021, this is going to be objective number 1, that's going to be done. 2022, this is going to be objective number 3. 2030, this is going to be objective number 4. That process cannot be done by the living because we cannot see past ourselves. In order for you, the Abadala or ancestors are able to see past themselves. They are able to communicate with other families and say, okay, fine, we don't have this gift here in the family. Who has it? Oh, you have it. Okay, fine. Our daughter or our son is going to marry your daughter, or so on and so forth. Or they may have a child together, but they won't get married. But that gift will, you see, and then the gifts will, our gift and their gift will come together. And in that child, the objective will be met. Do you see that kind of interaction, that kind of conversing is too much for the living to handle. We can't see past ourselves. You literally need to see or think about every step for, say, 5,000 people of a couple of hundred families for the next 400 to 500 years. Can't be done by the living. Okay, Sia, please assist. God as a higher being. When we pasha and pray, do we call God first? Okay. So, upasha, right, and pray. When upasha, right, you can communicate directly to your ancestors because you are needing it. Because you had a dream, and you want to know what Ukoko wants. So you light your 2 candles, you have your bowl of water, and ubizu Ukoko. Usukruma na Ukoko, and you're asking about what Ukoko wants. Right? That's Upasha. Praying is also a form of Upasha, but it involves God as well. So it doesn't matter whether you, so it doesn't matter which one you decide to opt for. You can even alternate. You can say Monday ya pasha, or and then next week Monday ufuna tandaza. That's fine. But when you pray, call God first, correct, and then ungababiza badala and ask for clarity, or just to say thank you for protection, thank you for looking out for me. Please continue to bless me. Does religion necessarily mean you have to go to church? Can one not have a direct relationship with God? You do have a direct relationship with God. You do have a direct relationship with God. But what what part of you has a relationship with God? Itongo lako has a relationship with God. So if itongo lako, your ancestral spirit, requires you to be in a certain space at a certain time, right, to connect to God, then you should go to church. So church, I like to put in inverted commas, because church can vary. Sometimes church with 5-10 people under a tree is what Itongo Lako wants. That they want that church under there in the tree. They may want a big church, or they may be happy with a smaller church. This is the thing with that's why I say in religion there's a lot of room to move. You can kind of work and communicate Netongo to finding the church that works best for you, right? And that makes Itongo happy. So you do have a relationship with God, but it's not you per se. It's what part of you has a relationship with God. It is Itongo, your ancestral spirit that has a relationship with God. And you want it to be able to be in the best possible position to receive the nourishment, and also receive the communication from God. And you need to, and that may require you to physics, because if you've been there, if you listen to my first lecture when I speak about the fundamentals of African spirituality, the onus is on you to use the autonomy, right? Your autonomy and agency to use this vessel, the body, to put yourself in the best possible position for Itongo to reach full expression and liberation. So put your body physically in the right space that Itongo requires, and that may be church. Okay, sorry. Let me just share screen again so we can go back to where we were. Let me just share screen again so I can wrap up today's lecture. Okay. Right. Okay, I'm just gonna last slide. African religion. So if you guys do have the time, please take the time to actually read up on African religion. Start with this interview. I think it was a great interview to kind of begin the understanding of African religion and the spirituality of Africa. Professor Jacob Olupuna, is professor of Indigenous African Religions at Harvard University in the States. And I've just taken 2 quotes from his lecture, which I feel are the most poignant. And this is where I'm going to conclude today's lecture. When he was asked, it sounds like African religion is dynamic and inclusive. He says, yes, it is pluralistic nature of African tradition religion is one of the reasons for success in the diaspora. African spirituality has always been able to adapt and change, allow itself to absorb wisdom and views of other religions, much more than, for example, Christianity and Islam. Remember what I was saying at the beginning of this lecture. While Islam and Christianity tend to be overtly resistant to adopting traditional African religious ideas or practices, indigenous African religions have always accommodated other beliefs. For example, African amulet might have inside of it a written verse from either the Quran or Christian Bible. The idea that the traditional African practitioner who has constructed that amulet believes in the efficacy of other faiths and religions, there is no conflict in his mind about traditional African spirituality and another faith. They are not mutually exclusive. This part here is important. He sees I want you guys to listen to this part here. I wish I had highlighted it. He sees the other faith as complementing and even adding to the spiritual potency to his own spiritual practice of constructing effective amulets. Indigenous African religions are pragmatic. It's about getting tangible results. So remember what I was saying. So how are you going to add to the spiritual potency of your job so that it can become a craft, so that it can become something that serves purpose and you can can have meaning? If you succumb to the superior spiritual trap and you don't see other religions or other faiths as complementing or parts of those other faiths that can add value to you, but you choose to remain narrow-minded and choosing to reject other forms or choosing to undermine other religious practices. Here's the last one, and then we'll call it a day. What allows African, and this is my favorite quote, probably my favorite one, I fell in love with this. What allows African indigenous religions to be so accommodating? One of the basic reasons, right? Okay. He says, one of the basic reasons that indigenous African spiritual beliefs are not bound by a text like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is not bound by a text. You know how in Africa, you know how they keep saying no, Africans were not, we were not a writing, we wouldn't have a culture of writing. It's because we understood this. And then he goes on to say, indigenous African religion is primarily an oral tradition and has never fully codified. Thus, it allows itself to more easily be amended and influenced by other religions, other religious ideas, religious wisdoms, and by modern development, emphasis on modern development. And then he says, holding or maintaining to uniform doctrine is not the essence of indigenous African religions. I want us to focus on this here. When he says, by modern development, the fact that Africans have been unable to evolve our spirituality and our culture with the times does not make sense. We should be the ones leading the change because it is our African religion that is actually in the best position to adapt. So please, guys, if you have the time, screen grab it, take a picture, use your phone or whatever the case may be. Just read the entire interview. And this is the one that'll start the cascade of events that'll begin to open your mind and guys, start to read about spirituality of Africa. Don't only engage in work written by people from Siyabonga Institute. No, read about African spirituality. Read about, there are phenomenal individuals that are coming up with incredible texts, with incredible insights into Africa. But please, guys, if you can do me one favor this week, is this right here. So thank you very much for taking the time to join me this evening. Once again, it was lovely spending time with you. There's many familiar faces. I love seeing familiar names here. I like that continuity. Stay safe during this lockdown. Have an absolutely blessed and wonderful Monday evening. It's Monday. And yeah, I hope the rest of the week goes in your favor. So please, guys, remember, we are not falling into, we are the perception of our spirituality is going to change. I hope I've begun to open your eyes about spirituality. When we say at Siyabonga Institute, we are about that we are about spirituality. I hope you guys understand now what I mean when I say we're not about culture, we're about spirituality. Thank you very much, Siyabonga for reminding me about the Q&A session. I will speak to the team and we will set that up for Thursday. Yeah. So Thursday, we're just going to do a simple Q&A session. Open, no topic in particular, really just anything that we've spoken about in the past couple of days that you haven't really been able to discuss, that we haven't, maybe you have a question that I didn't have time to get to answer to. So thank you very much for reminding me that thank you for reminding me. I will definitely get on top of that with the team. We had actually forgotten. So I have a comment here. Someone is saying that teaching adults is not easy. I think it's easy for me, because I'm also a student myself. I remain a student. I'm just trying my best to impart wisdom as much as I can and what I know. Thank you and good night.